What's up, everybody? And by everybody, of course, I mean all three of you who are going to be watching this. So, today we are going to. What are we going to do? Today we're going to talk about ornaments or any other fun name cutout type of engraving, CNC cutting, laser etching, whatever you want to do with it. You can see right here, I've got an example of a name customized ornament with a couple of cute little snowflakes ready to throw on the laser and cut it out, or engrave, or whatever you want to do with this. But this is a demo. I'm going to show you how to make this with all the components. So let's get started. Alright, to keep these tutorials from getting too long and tedious and boring, I'm just going to start with the components that we're going to use to make this design. I'll kind of walk you through some of it, but I'm going to assume if you're in Inkscape, you at least have a little bit of a head start to draw a circle or import an SVG of another design like the snowflake that you can type and pick your favorite font. I'm not going to get into fonts today, but for this type of design, I will suggest and say you probably want a font that's scripty, or at least that all the letters connect. I'll show you a little bit of how to tweak some of these things if you don't quite like how they're going to be, how they come together for your design. But let's get started. Alright, so for starters, I've got a primary base circle for my ornament. I got 3.5 inches for my diameter. I kind of like that size. Not everybody necessarily is going to go after the same thing, but set your foundation, set your base, and stick with it. Also, the hole that I've got, I think for me, 1/4 inch seems a little big, but an 1/8 inch is too small, so I go right between. I've got a 3/16 circle that will be the hole that the ribbon would run through, or the string, or whatever you're going to put through there. In this particular case, I've also got a 3-inch inside circle. So when I put these two together, I go to align and center them together. I can then go to path and say difference. So this is also the shortcut key here is Control minus. I use a lot of shortcut keys anywhere I can. I find that speeds up my my design process. I don't have to go looking through a menu or find something again. I can just hit 2 keys on the keyboard and keep going. So from now on, I'll say I'm going to do a difference, or I'll say Control minus to kind of give you an idea of what I'm hitting on my keyboard that you can't see here on the screen or in the webcam. But the idea here, same story. I'm going to line these two up, centered, centered. I'll hit Control minus, bam, there we go. I'm going to hold, click this circle, hold down Shift, click the next circle, and center those together. But then I'm going to hold down the Control key to constrain where I can drag this circle, and then I'll drag it straight down. So now I know it's still centered on that bottom circle. There's no magic here to how much should this overlap. Me personally, I don't quite go to the point where the hole is overlapping the other circle, but somewhere in that neighborhood. These two items I want to not do anything with yet. I'll get there. Alright, so now I've got kind of the general outline and shape of my ornament. I will get to a point where I union these things together or weld them together, but I'll save that for the end because I like to see all that come together all at the very end. Something else you'll kind of notice, I like to turn down the alpha channel, and I guess you can't see that because my webcam is in your way. Whoop! I like to turn down the alpha channel of my fills on these. That allows me to see these overlaps very clearly. Lets me know that they're not unioned or grouped together yet either. So you'll see that a lot of times I'll throw some stuff in some random colors and I'll turn their alpha down. And that is strictly because, like I said, it makes it easier for me to see while I'm designing what's going on. I can see the overlaps of objects. And it kind of helps me differentiate things as I'm designing. I'll come back at the end and put them all in the right colors or the right designs. By the way, you keep seeing me look over here. That's because I have a second monitor that's showing me my screen recording with the webcam. Back to it. Alright, so the name, I want it to fit in here, and I don't like things straight-laced. This name just going perfectly horizontal. When I do custom stuff like this, I like to throw things a little off kilter. I think it shows a little fun flair. The only thing I do need to be aware of is when I'm sizing this, I don't want to put it in a way that is only touching on one side, because you got to remember this name is floating. So when you're sizing this, you want to make sure you've got appropriate support for the name that you're dealing with. Backing up. Boop. So I'm not super happy with the way that this name is pieced together. Some really thin pieces coming, lining up from the H to the A. I'm going to kind of move this around a little bit to make sure that it's going to be a little more stable, a little less fragile. So when you're dealing with text, if I double click on here, I can still go in and edit this text. But that doesn't work too well with engraving. So you've got to take that text and you've got to so object path, that's Control-Shift-C. That'll take your text object and turn it into a whole bunch of editable nodes. Now here's one key point. I just hit that. You can kind of see where each letter overlaps the other letters now. That again, you can see that clearly because I turned down my alpha channel a little bit so that there's some transparency going on that makes that easy to see. But if you look down at the bottom here, you'll notice it says group of 5 objects. So when you take text and turn it into a path, it actually turns each letter into its own path. Control-Shift-G will ungroup, or you can right-click and hit ungroup. So I'll mention that later if I'm doing that again. But ungroup turns it into 5 separate letters. The cool thing about this now is I can zoom in and move each letter individually. These are all individual nodes. I can modify nodes and get the shape just the way I like it. You might also notice as I move stuff around, it pops back. I'm just hitting Control-Z to undo. Again, keystrokes, keyboard shortcuts save a lot of time. A lot of times with these fonts, you see there's lots of squiggles in this particular font. When I double click on something, there's a decent number of nodes all over these squiggles. I do like to, depending on the font, use the simplify, which is Control-L. Some fonts, some objects and paths, it does not look right on at all. It just makes it look too blobby. But with this particular font, I found that it doesn't do too bad of a job, and it smooths out most of the letters, most of the little wigglies. A few places it gets a little goofy, but those are easy to fix because if you looked at how many nodes it had before versus how many nodes it has now, it's a very minimal number of nodes. Very easy to modify these shapes now. So I'm going to do a few tweaks, modifications, and we'll get right back to it. Move this down, fix this shape a little bit. I don't like how high this A is. Bring the W down a little bit. I think I'd like this to be a little bit wider. Same here, I'd like this one to be a little bit wider. Don't really like the shape of this A over here. I like to see this swoop kind of rush right into that H. I kind of squint a little bit to see, are these lines kind of showing up where I want to see them. I think I like it. I think I'm good with this. I am now going to highlight all 5 of these objects, and I'm going to do a union, which is Control+. that's going to weld all these together. I'm going to undo and show you what that looks like. See this overlap between these two letters. Lasers don't like that. They want to do exactly what they see. CNC wants to do the exact same thing. So if you got a router or a rotary engraver, if you wanted a V-carve, something like this or whatever. So Control plus, that, or up under path, you can hit Union. That welds, connects all these little paths, and now there's none of these little overlaps. It's literally just a straight connection. Alright, so now I can take this like I like throwing it at a little off-kilter angle. When this is all said and done, it's going to end up being the same object, so you won't see these overlaps. So kind of like I welded the letters together, I'm going to end up in the end welding this whole thing together to make it one solid object. So I need to make sure I'm happy with how much these overlap before we get to that point. Again, I kind of, in this particular design, I'm thinking of a laser to cut this out in its entirety. So it's going to be kind of fragile if there's any thin parts. So I need to make sure that I'm making enough supports in here so there's nothing really floating really far out without, you know, at least touching something. So what I'm looking at is maybe making sure the snowflake touches the letter somewhere here in the middle. Again, that's not necessary. If you've got a pretty thick font, maybe you're not too worried about any of that. Me, I kind of like giving it a little bit of support and flair with the design. Right there, if you didn't notice what I did, I highlighted this when I hit Control D to duplicate. So I just made a copy of it, and it made it right on top of itself. It's kind of like copy and paste in place. And then you can grab that top one, and you've got, you know, a duplicate of it. But you know, this part right here, it just kind of comes down to design. What do you like? Coming up with something you think is fun or pretty or what have you. So I'm just going to make sure I'm supporting that S somewhere in the middle of the font. I'm giving it some support. I think I like this. I'm going to call that done. You saw I just kind of moved things around, scaled them up and down. One thing you may not be seeing me do, when I scale things, when I grab any of these arrows, if you don't restrain yourself, you end up giving yourself squished and ugly things. Oh my gosh, I hate it when I see crap like that. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't squish it. If you hold down the Control key on your keyboard while you grab any of these, it allows you to keep your ratio. It allows you to keep your scale. If it's a circle, it'll keep it a circle. If it's a square, it'll keep it a square. Don't turn circles into ovals. Don't turn squares into rectangles. Hold down Control when you're scaling these things. You'll save my sanity, because that's all that matters. So yeah, like I said, just kind of go at this, play around with however you want to put these things together. Whether you're dealing with, you know, little deer and fish for an outdoorsy themed design, or if you're dealing with snowflakes or whatever. Again, they don't have to intersect the letters, but I like to do it just to give that a little extra support, make it a little less fragile. Now I'm going to hit Control plus. That's the union. That's what I did to the letters of the name earlier. It's all one design. I'm not sure I like the way that snowflake hits the letter A, so I'm going to undo that. I'm going to move that over here a little bit. I'm going to highlight it all again, hit Control plus. I like that a lot better. Now for me, I use K40 Whisperer. I've got a little K40 laser, so I've got to put the red outline and no fill for this to work on my engraver, or on my my laser. I can throw that on there, throw my wood, my acrylic, whatever I'm going to cut this out of, and bada bing, bada boom. I've got an ornament. So that's not too different than the one we started with. Same concept. Things are moved around a little bit, but again, it's meant to be custom. It's meant to be unique for your customer, for your sake. So let me give you one other tip, and a way to recover and save yourself. So maybe you've got a whole family that you want to do this thing for, and you're like, oh, now I got to start all over to make the next one. Don't do that. Don't do that. So watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to zoom out. I'm going to be like, oh man, I forgot to save like the process, because it's all welded together. It's all unioned together. I can't easily take this name out without having to like rebuild these nodes that are missing for these snowflakes, right? I mean, So I'm going to highlight everything. I'm going to copy, and I'm going to start hitting Control Z until I get to, oops, I'm going to Control Y to move that snowflake back. So this is now my unwelded object. Cool. I'm going to paste the finished product that I already did. I guess I didn't need to copy that one. That was my other finished product. I now have my finished Sean ornament stashed over here. And now, if I need to make another one, boop, boop. That is not how you spell my name. I can come in here and boop-a-doo, boop-a-doo, boop. Take out that name. Again, holding Control when you scale things. Don't be stupid. And again, these aren't touching, so alright, I'm going to Control-Shift-C, turn it into path, Control-Shift-G to ungroup, and I'm going to move this S over a little bit. I'm going to move the A and the M and the S over to hit that. What am I going to do with this? I'm going to make sure that snowflake touches the T and the H to give them support. So I think I'm okay with where those are at. I'm going to hit Control plus to union them all together. Now the name is just a one big bunch of nodes. See how many nodes there are? That's maddening. I'm going to hit Control L. That's the simplify function under path. See how few nodes I have now? And it's a little bit smoothed out. Like I said, sometimes it doesn't work out in your favor. Sometimes it looks great just as it is. So anyways, I'm going to just run with it, except for that. I'm going to make that just a little more bloop. Bloop. Oh man. That is not pretty. That is not pretty. Bada bang, bada boom. Bada bang, bada boom. Alright, now that I monkeyed with that a little bit, I'm going to scale this up a little bit to get it touching the ornament where I want it to touch. Bam, bam, bam. I'm going to move this one over so that it's touching the middle of the M a little bit. Bam, bam, bam. I'm going to take this one, and I'm going to rotate it. And I'm going to bring it up here so that it's holding on to the bottom of the T and the bottom of the H. And you know what? I don't like that there's nothing connecting here. So I'm going to use this Bezier curve to draw a shape. I'm going to fill it in. I'm going to edit these nodes to shrink that down a little bit. Make it look like it kind of is an extension of that H, right? Now that I'm doing that, I'm looking at the T and I'm not liking some of this shape. Cool. So now I need to union that in with all of that. Look at that. Now the T and the H are connected. And I still like the, you know what? I don't really care to have the ornament touching the H now. I like, hey, there we go. Just a little bit of contact. Just a little bit of boop. Just enough to support it. Cool. I like that. And bam. And see there, I did it again. Undo. I'm going to duplicate this, drag it off to the side, union that all together. Get my red outline with no inside fill, and you can't even see it because it's so thin. So there you go. Now we got a Thomas and a Sean. They're mildly different if you overlap them because these things moved around a little bit, but the idea is they are custom. You've got your names. Go on to the next one. Duplicate it before you union it. That saves you some time. I hope that was helpful. I hope it gave you a few tips that you didn't know before. And I hope you make some awesome ornaments. I'd love to see some links to what you're making. Cool. Yeah, the whole liking and subscribing thing, that would be awesome. I'm just getting started. I do a lot of design work with a K40 laser. I've got a CNC engraver router cutter, about a 30-inch by 30-inch bed on that sucker that I play with. And I do a lot of little woodworking and crafting and stuff with the missus. So I figured, it's about time I start sharing some of this knowledge and seeing if I can't just give back to the community. So take care, guys. Shaka.